Sometimes life changes so quietly that you don't realize it until you look back. When I married Edwin, the life we built together was like a perfect picture. Everything seemed to be in order. He worked long hours and spent most of his time at the office. I took care of the household and looked after John to make sure everything ran smoothly. John was Edwin's son from a previous marriage. There was always a distance between us, but that was just the way it was. After all, he was a young man and I was his stepmother. Until John turned 18, everything was normal: dinners with friends from school, quiet mornings, all part of my daily routine. John growing up was just a natural part of life. Who would have thought that one day it would all change? But one morning, when I thought everything was about to change, I realized that I hadn't even noticed what was happening at that moment. I didn't realize that opening a door without thinking would change my life forever. Unfortunately, that door led to the bathroom. If you like listening to stories like this, please subscribe to my channel and watch the video until the end. Don't forget to click the like button, it really helps me continue sharing these touching stories. Trust me, this is one you don't want to miss. That night, as the sun set, the house fell into its usual silence. Edwin was still working as usual, and I wanted to give myself some time before preparing dinner. John should be in his room, probably studying or absorbed in his computer. He'd been so withdrawn lately that I hardly noticed his presence in the house anymore as I went through my mind these things. I walked distractedly towards the bathroom. The door is open, but I don't think much of it, my mind is full of other things. Maybe I just feel that everything is fine, that this moment belongs to me. I feel that everything is running according to plan, but unfortunately things are about to take a turn that I don't imagine. As soon as I enter the room, I freeze. JN is standing there with his back to me, naked. I can only hear the sound of water, a soft rustling. He is holding something in his hands, maybe washing his hands. I don't know. For a few seconds, I didn't understand what I was seeing at all, I just stared at him. But in that frozen moment, time seemed to have stopped. Not knowing what to do or say, John had his back to me, and for a moment I noticed the lines of his body. Everything seemed so natural and so ordinary, and I thought maybe I could pretend that nothing had happened, but nothing was normal anymore. That door would never close in the same way again. We just stood there, silently gazing at each other. John suddenly turned around, and when his eyes met mine, I saw a flash of pure shock. I wasn't sure what he was feeling, but instinctively he turned his back to me, almost as if to hide the glistening droplets of water on his body, but his expression spoke louder than any words could. "I'm sorry," his eyes told me. I couldn't speak, my throat felt like it had a knot in it, but eventually I said the words, even though I didn't want to. "John, you've grown up," I said, trying to sound confident. "It's normal, you need to take care of yourself. I'll always be there for you." I took a step, hesitant but gentle. "John," I said, my voice trembling, but I tried to stay calm. "Is there a problem? Do you need help?" "I want to stay with him, to help him." I quickly walked to the wardrobe, trying to buy myself a little time. I grab a towel and body lotion and slowly walk towards him. "The towel," I say softly, "take this. Don't get me wrong, but your skin is dry from all the sweating, maybe this will help." John's eyes are more complicated than ever. I really don't know what he's thinking, but somehow I just want to help him calm down. I'm so confused inside, I take every step with extreme care. I want him to feel safe, because maybe that's exactly what he needs. John looks at me, his face reddening, and after a few seconds, he freezes, trying to avoid my gaze, then lowers his head slightly and whispers almost inaudibly, "I'm sorry, Sarah, I shouldn't do this in front of you. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." I'm so embarrassed. The tenderness and shame in his voice make me even more embarrassed. I just want to say something to help him, but I don't know what to say. His eyes were full of so many things, and I felt lost in all his emotions. I spoke slowly, "John," my voice trembling and gentle. "These things happen, we all go through moments like this. Don't feel anything is wrong. I just want you to be yourself, no matter how you feel. Please don't be embarrassed." Even my voice has changed. I'm not sure if I'm saying the right thing, but somehow I continue, my heart racing. I think maybe he didn't understand. He's staring at me, everything is so confusing and unusual. We can only look at each other and feel the confusion in our hearts. After a while, I take a deep breath and try to calm myself down. I say, I'm sorry, slowly step back. I should have said it earlier, but now that we were alone, we should make sure we were okay first. I lowered my head, took a step back and walked out of the bathroom. Deep down, I can still feel the tension in that moment. I silently withdrew from everything that happened that day. Everything had changed, and every moment at home reminded me of that moment between John and me. Irreparable. Whenever our eyes met, there was always a sense of distance, but also a strange urge to get closer. Edwin is at work, and we try to make everything seem normal, but to be honest, nothing is normal anymore. A week later. I don't expect John to be home. After breakfast, I'll do the housework. A few days ago, I noticed that John's room needs tidying up. The bed is unmade, and the room is a mess, just like him. Books, old toys, magazines. I decide to go in and clean up, but suddenly I feel uneasy. I slowly open the door and go in. And at that moment, I was struck by the same feeling again. John was lying on his back in bed, wearing only his pajama shorts. His body glistened in the warmth of the air, just like it had that day. Suddenly, I didn't know what to do. My breath caught in my throat. He hadn't noticed that I had come in, but I could already feel the echoes of that moment. I could see the same feeling in him. A flood of thoughts raced through my mind. I stood there, not knowing what to say. John, I said, my voice trembling, but this time it was different, not shocked but worried. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to raise my voice, just a little. Is something wrong? Do you need help? Can you hear me? My words came out like they were unintentionally falling from my lips, but I had to say them because that's how I felt. I knew things would never be the same again, which meant we needed to be closer to each other. When he notices me, my eyes are a little closer to his, but I see the same concern and confusion in his eyes, which makes things even more difficult. What does it mean? Where are we going? He slowly stands up and turns his gaze towards me. He said that I might need to talk to someone, but his voice sounded almost like a confession. He added quietly but sincerely that maybe I needed to talk to you. At that moment, we drew closer to each other. I didn't understand what was happening, but our feelings had become complicated and we were no longer the same as before. John slowly got up, avoiding my gaze and lowering his head. At that moment, he seemed to have temporarily left the world behind and become lost in his own thoughts. He became very quiet, as if something was growing in the silence. What's going on? Why is this happening? Why can't things be like they used to be? I want to help you, John, I said, stepping closer to him. You don't have to keep this a secret, I understand you. You don't have to feel so alone. John kept his head down and listened quietly for a while, not having the courage to look at me, but then he took a deep breath and turned his gaze back to me. But do I need to tell Edwin? He asked, his voice quavering a little and his eyes full of uncertainty. John, I said softly but firmly, you two need to share this. You need to support each other and help each other to be able to go on healthily. You don't have to suppress your feelings. Edwin loves you and he wants to help you, but he also needs to know certain things. No, you have to share with him. You can't ignore him. John's eyes fill with tears, but how do I tell him that? He won't understand. He murmurs under his breath, how do I say it? Will he understand? Will he judge me? He won't judge you. John, I approach him and gently stroke his shoulder. Edwin loves you, he'll always be there for you. It's not weakness, you need to open up to him so he can help you. You don't have to hide it, maybe you can work it out together. John thought for a moment, his eyes fixed on the floor, still showing confusion, but now more fear and worry. But what would I say to him? He repeated, his lips trembling. I just can't. I don't know what to say. I'm not sure what to say, but my feelings are clear. I can't leave John alone like this, cut off from everything. He's so young, and everything he's been through will only get him into trouble. I want to help him, but John has to make his own choices. Talking about these things can be hard. I looked him in the eye and said, but remember, your feelings are just for you, you don't have to suppress them. If you can't say it, we can figure it out together, but remember, we love you. Taking a deep breath, nodded, but he still looked uncomfortable. Maybe I should wait a while longer, he said, his voice still trembling, but this time more firmly. I think I'll slow down a bit. I guess I nodded, to show that I of course understood John, but remember that no matter what happens, we support you. I felt a little uncomfortable because there was something I didn't know. Silence enveloped everything, as if everything had been covered up. Maybe we just need more time to do the right thing. One night, everything changed unexpectedly. The sound coming from John's room completely overwhelmed me. Usually, the house would have been quiet by now, and John would have been silent as usual, but tonight I could hear the sound coming from his room. I didn't think anything of it, but I had a feeling that something had changed. I was curious, so I walked towards John's room. The door was ajar. I took 2 steps, and before I knew it, I opened the door. John and Edwin were there. John spoke very frankly and courageously. At first I was shocked. Edwin listened very attentively and with great understanding. This really shocked me. I noticed the relief on John's face at that moment. I could feel that everything had changed. I was so happy, my heart was racing. John had finally overcome his fear and shame and opened up to his father. This was the beginning of everything. Maybe this will open the door to healthy communication for us. From now on, as Edwin nods and listens to John, I see understanding and love in his eyes. John keeps talking, his head bowed, but he is determined. At first he was scared and embarrassed, but now he is determined. John looks at me, his face softens, and I see trust in his eyes. Looking into his eyes, I feel a sense of relief, because I know that from that moment on, I helped him, and everything will be different. I took a few steps and sat down next to him. I spoke slowly, "Thank you, Sarah." JN's expression was more frank and sincere than any I had ever seen. "I owe you. You have shown me that I don't have to be afraid, I don't have to be ashamed. Talking to you has really helped me." My emotions were mixed. On the one hand, I was very happy to hear JN say that to me, but on the other hand, I was shocked by the changes in our lives. But this is a step towards doing the right thing. "John," I said, my voice trembling but firm, "I am proud of you and lucky to know someone as strong as you. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. Whatever happens, I will always be there for you." John nodded and thanked me again. His eyes were shining, showing that he had changed a lot. Now, we had both reached a different level and we were closer than ever. Edwin understood me very seriously. From that day on, I was full of gratitude for him. Our relationship grew stronger and stronger. I was sure that from now on everything would get better. Free from all the dark and complicated emotions of the past, things have developed in this way since that day. John takes every opportunity to thank me, sometimes just with a look, sometimes with words. He is no longer afraid or ashamed. We are finally united, the barrier between us has disappeared, we have become more open and more honest. Maybe from now on our lives will no longer be the same, as long as our hearts are connected. If you've read this far, I know you're hooked and there's so much to share that you don't want to miss a thing. Don't forget to click the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below the story. I'd love to know what you think, so let's chat in the comments.